We're now in the era of everybody having an opinion. So for anything you want to talk about, or you see, or you hear, you already have people with multiple opinions. Everybody is now a thought leader. You don't need to go to school, you don't need to learn, you just need to wake up, have a device, and talk. And one thing we talk about a lot is politics. It's almost 2023, less than 6 months to the election. What are young people saying? How are they participating? And all the talk, does it have any impact? You're now tuned in to the update, and we will be talking about the elections, the past, the present, and where we want to head to. Several young people came out and tried to run after the Not Too Young to Run bill was signed. How many of them are in office? Where are they now? What are they doing? And that's one of the conversations we'll be having today with someone who I love and respect so much, because when we started hearing of the Future Awards in 2011, she was the Future Awards winner in the creative space. She has been a senior special assistant to a governor. She's also a special advisor to a minister, and she has constantly been involved in grassroots politics. It is my pleasure to introduce, drumroll, Aisha Augie. My name is Andy Madaki, and this is
Aniakan Ezekiel. Welcome.
Aisha. For you, we'll break protocols. We'll just get into it.
We don't need protocols.
We don't need to.
No, you should treat me as honourable already now.
Right? You know what? We need to call you honourable.
Yes, you need to do the government thing.
We need to start.
Aisha, what fascinates me about you is the fact that when young people are talking about we need to participate, when we talk about the Trudeau, the Macrons, when we talk about Rishi, they all started from somewhere.
Yes.
And so no one can come to Aisha and say, what have you done? Because you started from somewhere and you're still in the system. And so you aren't one of those people who tried, then walked away from it. And so we're here to learn from your wealth of experience.
Thank you, Andy.
Will you call yourself a politician?
Yes, I do, proudly so.
Why?
Proudly so. Because we just need to change who a politician is and what we see a politician as. And one thing that I know growing up, I remember my dad was a politician. Well, he was a broadcaster who became a politician. And I remember a time that there was a lot of drama and fight. It was, I think, the Shinkafi Tofa era. He was running for president and vice, if I remember clearly then. And I remember the chaos of people and, the need to put out stuff and money and things like that. And it just seemed, even the meetings behind the scenes, I was privy, I was young, I really didn't understand it. But I remember saying, no, I'm never going to do this. I don't want to do this type of, just going around the whole country, traveling, having to hear people shout. And it was very scary for me. Mm-hmm. And I decided, no, this life was definitely not going to be for me. But fortunately, I became a journalist, photographer. I was doing photojournalism, and I used to do a lot of documentary. I was hired by a lot of developmental agencies. And so I had to ask questions. I would go to communities to document the work that's being done there. I would document many things, like even protests. Andy, I think I remember back in the day,
multiple
so many
protests
of them,
from Enough is Enough.
And the point is, I now realize there's a huge gap between the people and the government.
So I'm curious, in these 15 years, I'm curious as to what your perspective is like, because there have been a lot of changes. As you can say, there's a lot more access.
Yes.
We have more opportunities to be more informed. So just overall, I'm curious, participating that early on and up until now, what do you see as the broad trajectory that we've been on? I mean, in terms of political participation as young people?
I think if we look back, it's even beyond then, because I did my NYSC in 2002 and I started teaching. I was teaching in a school in Enugu, and I looked extra young even then. Like, the teachers would think that I was a student. So it wasn't really a very conducive environment. And after a while, the school were like, we love you, come once in a while for English to teach us English, but we really don't have work for you. So I remember I ended up at the INEC Resident Commissioner's Office. So that was really my first foray into understanding this thing, and that's where you had the files of people, background checks, do they really are they really who they say they are? Yes, we had it then. That's the first time I knew that all the politicians had their files, especially if you had won the primaries and your names were submitted. They all had their files at the INEC office, and I was put in the storeroom, and I remember going through documents even then. I actually found an anomaly at the time, and I brought it up to my supervisor, and that one said, here is deadly. Oh, they're killing people. You can't come and talk and say you've seen something wrong. And I remember I went even to the resident commissioner at the time, who is now, he's a huge SAN now within the political space. He does a lot of political cases, especially involving party members and party people. But then he was a resident rep, and he was like, well, okay, thank you so much. I've noted this. And I remember the next week I was moved from the store.
Wow.
I was moved from the store to some other place, and I remember my supervisor even saying to me, you actually don't have to come to work. You can come once in a month and sign off, and
Wow.
You'll be fine. And I remember saying my mother would kill me. Like, I was not raised to say you want to do this work. And I remember telling her, and there was one time she actually escorted me. They started calling me Big Baby because my mom went to me.
Because she wanted to know where you were working.
To say, okay, she's really actually going to work, because I had said to her that these people told me, because I go and I just sit down doing nothing.
Yeah.
But I stayed for most of the year. So that was really my first intro into what politics was like. And I remember getting people to try to register, to vote. It progressed all to the enough is enough days.
Light Up Nigeria.
Light Up Nigeria, register, select, vote,
Yes.
protect. So we did all of that as citizens, just trying to get people to get more involved.
I agree with you. So being someone who has tried her hands at it, there are a lot of myths. When I used to be abroad, I felt I knew all the problems to all the answers to Nigerian problems, that you just need to do A, B, C, and you get X, Y,
I have
Z.
a white paper.
You get me? And then I came to Nigeria and I was like, it's different.
Yeah.
It's the same way. While we encourage technology and we applaud its growth in our society, there are a lot of beliefs people have on social media and on the internet that aren't real when you get to the field, to the grassroots. Tell us about those myths which you found out were different from what you thought it was.
Gosh. So I would say, just like Malam El-Rufai and his book, The Accidental Public Servant. I think it was an accident as far as I was concerned. Yes, I was serving, but I never thought I was going to run.
Yeah.
This is 2018, right? And I was serving, I was SSC to the governor at the time. And for me, in my community, no woman had ever tried. So it's not even an option. It wasn't even something that came to mind for even me at the time. It's like when you're learning about gender roles and gender stereotypes and things like that, you don't realize you're actually one of them. So for me, that was the first lesson. That even for me, that felt I was exposed, educated, and all of that, I still had some limitations when it came to how I saw even my own gender and myself, right? So I had all these young people and women who were like, oh, you're doing the work. Because I was a photographer. I entered I think I went to every local government, I've been to almost every ward, and not just for campaigns. Like, I would go searching for stories, searching for elephants, all sorts of things, And some people created these posters. I had no clue. I had actually traveled. I was not in the country at the time. And the first set of posters came up. You could tell like it was amateurs that made them. And I was like, oh, this is cute, Nice. At least there's some young people who are trying to come up with some. I didn't know who was behind them. I just found them. Someone sent them to me from Facebook. And then a proper poster comes up. And I remember who made it go viral was Bayo Omoborio.
Okay.
Because Bayo posted it. He saw it and then he's like, oh, these are the kind of people we need to support. And the next thing, the whole country, I was getting phone calls, messages, we would support you. It really shocked me. So that was my second lesson. We assume that we're not going to be, brought or accepted.
Yeah.
But for me, that was another lesson. And I spoke to one of my mentors then, and she was like, Aisha, you don't say no. In politics, you don't say no when people come to ask you, because it's an honor to represent them. They see you as someone that can be a voice for them. And I was like, no, that's ridiculous. I can't do this. I remember I even had like a anxiety attack in the office and everything. But then I came back to Nigeria and I started getting threatening phone calls from even one of my uncles, who was like, you want to come and destroy your father's name. I had people within the political sector, even within the government, that were like, are you out of your mind? What is this nonsense? And it actually takes me off, because I was like, okay, so what if I wanted to serve? Is this what I'm going to get? And the final straw was one of my family members coming to actually threaten my mom in her house. And it was more like, the family is going to have a meeting and she will not do this. First of all, she's a Muslim. She's not meant to be heard. She's from the north. Like, it was. And my mom sat there and she said she remembers when she begged them to leave my dad, because he was actually coerced into joining the politics. And she was like, I don't want this life. I'm not trying to be a politician's wife. And she said to him, I remember when I begged you guys and I saw the difference her father made. And whatever she decides to do, it's on her. If she says she's running, I'm behind her. And he's like, well, Aisha, if we get the family meeting. I said, no problem. If the family says, has a meeting. And my dad died in 2001. So the family had broken up in a way. We didn't really have a huge, but there was a meeting of over 200 people. Some of my uncles had not spoken to each other since my dad, like, it was bad, right? So the emir called me at the time and he was like, there's a lot of talk, is this really happening? So I was like, no, not really. Like, I'm still thinking about it. It's not like I even have the money or the tentacles to spread to do this, but I'm learning. I want to find out. And he was like, well, one thing first is, I know even if you're not running, just the fact that the family have come together, I believe you need to come and listen to them. So I went home, had sat down and had this meeting, and they were like, listen, you need to do this. We are 100% behind you. I was really shocked. I was really shocked. So that was another, and the liver is like. And then I got another threatening phone call that basically told me, listen, we're going to put 0 on the ballot regardless. I said, well, we still have a couple of months to go. Let's see. Whatever happens, happens.
Wow. So we can clearly see that there's a thread running through, which is that seeing the involvement in leadership and governance from an election standpoint is already, you've missed the train.
You've missed it.
And we did have, the other guests who spoke about that as well, alluding to the fact that we sort of have to get into the run-up.
Yes.
So that really is something that we can sit and marinate with. But one of the things that has come out strongly to me, or two broad themes that have come out strongly to me now, listening to you, are the themes around female involvement in politics and what that looks like even behind the scenes, because you spoke about that platform, and that's, frankly speaking, that's really dope. That exists.
We support ourselves. We're there.
Man, I don't know that, guys. Do we have?
We do have a general aspirants forum, but I think for
really
the female one, it was super important for us because there weren't many, and every day you wanted to give up.
Right.
Every day you wanted to give up. It's one of those situations, and it wasn't just a northern thing. It wasn't just a Kebbi thing. Like, I have people from Imo, people from Delta. We have people on these groups that are all trying to be heard, trying to represent their own people, because you go into meetings, and I know my thought process as a woman. I know what it takes as a mother. I know what it takes as someone who has had to create a job for herself in between and things like that, based on my experience as an entrepreneur. And you can actually make a difference, that the thought process is different from how a man would think. We're brought up differently. Just the other day, I was reading a post by Otto Arandam, and he brought up all the books about gender roles and gender stereotypes. The power that you have as a man, I may not have. The power I have as a woman, you may not have. It's not about like we're against each other.
Yeah.
How do we come up together as a unit and say, okay, you know what? We're all part of this society, whether we like it or not. It's not about who is representing us, but who is there to take charge of everybody's affairs.
So you say this, and a question that keeps ringing in my head is, can you speak a bit about the link between sort of, or the pressure you faced as a female candidate? You've alluded to it, and sort of the things where you had almost a 200.
Let's not forget adding everybody thinking I was a child.
Yeah.
So
we had
there is
major ageism.
Fantastic.
Yes.
That's something else that needs to be explored. So when I think about that, I'm curious as to what the pressures were like, because there are other people who are looking up to you, people who perhaps may not have, women who may not have had the boldness to be able to take all the opportunity, to seize at the time.
Yes.
What that pressure was like, because I'm curious, I would imagine that would be a lot of pressure, a lot of expectations. And then at the same time, the idea of violence, and I say violence in two broad forms. One is social violence, which you've sort of spoken about. A lot of people sort of questioning just because you're a woman and meeting different varied levels of aggression. So there's social violence on one hand, but I'm also curious as to what that translated like as a female candidate on the road.
Yes.
Because we also know that physical violence is a very interesting...
Very much part of it. In fact, one of my women leaders used to be a ballot snatcher. Yes.
Fantastic.
So when I was in Keb, like I said, I worked with a lot of young people, and the honest truth is, I think when you're thinking about running, your thought process, you start thinking about what people think about you, what you need to do. But prior to that, I did not have that in mind. So I was genuinely just serving.
Before we come back to your own election, because we're just talking about myths, let's talk about stereotypes. Northern Nigeria.
Yes.
You are a northerner.
I am.
See how you speak. You just had another postgraduate degree
I
about
did.
a month ago.
Finally, after 10 years
I
of
know.
trying.
And people look at northerners and say they're illiterate. They just vote in one direction. That's the stereotype. People put all the northerners in one box.
Yes.
Speak to it and the reality on ground.
Well, first things first, I know we have a lot of ignorant people when it comes to traversing Nigeria. A lot of people don't travel. I've been to 33 states and the FCT, so I just have 3 left. I have Taraba, Yobe, and Kwara. I've touched down on Kwara, but I never made it into the city. So one thing I know is from your accent, I can say, okay, you're from this area. I try to learn. As a photographer, I used to do a lot of traditional. I wanted to understand culture, so I used to travel for the festivals, for weddings. I loved the traditional weddings because it was always different. Everybody had their culture and their ways of doing things. So I think that has helped me open up my eye to who a person is. Directly to me as Aisha Augie.
Yeah.
I grew up in a multi-religious family, multi-race and multi-tribe. There's Igbo in me, there's Niger State Rupe, there is, do you understand? And so I've never been able to fit into these boxes that Nigerians create for themselves, where I must be from this place, or this is my kinsman, or for me, I've never been able to do that, and even this northerner that you're saying, the northerners in the past did not accept me because I didn't dress the part. I didn't grow up dressing as an Ariwa person. So I also went through that. They'll be like, that Weibo child, and the things you do, they're like, this was Erbariki. I don't know if you know what that means. Barracks child. That was my nickname. Barracks child is someone who grew up in the barracks. Because you grew up in the barracks, you don't have the strength in your own culture. And it was meant to be a demeaning word. But I took it on. I even say to them, Erbariki Tazo, which means barracks girl is here.
She's here.
I take it with pride because it's a thing of pride for me to say, it doesn't matter who you are, where you're from. I see Nigeria first. I've always had that. So I can't really speak to, dealing with the whole stereotypical thing. I think wherever I've been to, I've been accepted. But I do get it because for people who've met me for the first time, they hear my name, they see my look, and they're like, wow, you can speak English.
But
like, you must have known. You didn't grow up, there. It's like...
But even looking at voting patterns now, I believe so. I've seen what's happening in Kaduna State. If you're going as a presidential candidate, everyone sits in a room and you come pitch yourself. You leave, the next person comes.
Yes.
And I find out to be very impressive.
And
So,
effective.
and very effective. So it's not like sections. All of you come and talk to us. Let's hear you out.
Yeah.
Other Nigerians talking about, I've not heard of that in other states.
Yeah.
And so when time comes to vote, people would have expected, oh yeah, Aisha Augie, you've worked with the governor, it should be easy for you.
Yeah.
But the people still have a say. You were
They
talking
do.
earlier about how it could be someone you don't even understand that is controlling something. It doesn't matter your family, your level of education. So what do the people consider when it comes down to it?
Yeah, so when it comes, for me, I think it's money. For
Very-
Nigerians,
very
our
important to
voters, I
speak
don't
your
know
truth.
about voters of today, but money, age, power.
Yeah.
That structure that they keep talking about. When they say structure, it's not just money. You can come with all the money you have. In fact, I have politicians that will be like, you people, sure you have money.
Bring
Don't
it.
worry, we'll chop it. But they are not even seeing you with value. So you have a lot of people that will talk about nepotism, that will talk about the family they want to maintain, they want to own and continue owning the space. But even when it comes to voting, you have people that will be like, look at this guy. There's a guy who ran with us, has no political background. None. And one of the things the community was like, who the hell does he think he is? Excuse my French. Why would he come? From where? Who is his father? Do you understand? It's like you can't just come from anywhere.
Regardless
At
of
least this
what
one,
you
we
have
know
to
her
offer.
grandfather is this. We know this one, his mother is that, or his father was that. Like there's that expectation. 2, money. How much money are you distributing? How many wrappers? How many bags of rice? I have someone who told me he voted because of biscuit. He said at least he saw biscuits because in his community it's very far out and it's there's water before you get there. So a lot of politicians don't go to that area. And he said he voted because he got biscuits. So you have those, when they say voter buying, the expectations of the people themselves that are voting is super important. And that's why I say when I hear people say, I'm not going to bother, I'm wasting my vote. How will you ever fight for your vote if you don't get involved, if you don't actually do it? For me, if I go to vote, I want to see where it will go. What are the numbers as we're there? Let them count it. I'm sitting there till they count. Who is sending it in? At INEC, is it the same as what happened in my unit? And now we do have a lot of CSOs, and I think it's a beautiful thing because we all have to actually put in the work. Then you have age.
Yeah.
I think at the time I was SA, we had maybe 80% of the cabinet members have been commissioners the past 4 times. Do you understand? Like they're old. We have a lot of old people. I think it was the 3rd year or so that the governor now brought in some young people. And even at that, for me, even me, he was attacked. Why should you bring this person as an SA? Or the young people too, he was like, why? You understand? What do they know? You know,
because you're taking a whole constituency,
a whole constituency,
a whole local government,
and they
so
have
you're
their
taking
thoughts
spot.
and their new age ideas. As I have young people today that when they speak, I'm like, wow, I never thought of that. You need that spice, you need that exposure, you need people who come up with things that you wouldn't normally talk about or experiences that they bring. You know, it's different. So you have the ageism factor, power, which is who has been in charge for so long. That godfather thing was a big deal. I think it's dropped a lot more now because we have more people getting involved. We have more sections of society. But when we ran, it was like, who's your godfather? I don't have. So how do you expect to win? They've already told us this is who we're voting for. And you talked about stereotype. For the many of the women that came out to vote, they waited until they were on the queue. Their husbands told them who they would vote for.
Wow.
The husbands were waiting to confirm from their godfathers who they would vote for. So when they say structure, those are the things they're talking about. It's not just about having money or having people. Who are those people that will be on that queue that day?
And what are they being told?
What are they being told? Do they have a mind of their own? So I was very happy to see the new polls with the INEC number of voters, and you could see you have entrepreneurs, you have working class people, you have educated people that have registered to vote. The numbers weren't that high in the past. It was mostly housewife, businessman.
Very true.
So I think the voting dynamic has also changed. And then the voter apathy. People are finally getting angry.
Yes.
Nigeria has been through a lot. And when I say they're finally getting angry, it's not anger of going to break down warehouses or burn down cars. The anger of, I must take charge of who leads me.
Quick thing we must have Aisha speak on is merit versus tokenism. Now, women have said, give us an extra seat in each state so that we have people who can speak for us on the floor. After a couple of years, you can now cancel that. But for now, give us a quota where we're represented. Say our Gender and Equal Opportunities Bill. It can't get passed because how many women are in the National Assembly? It has dropped from what it was in 2015.
Even worse.
It's now lower, and it may get lower in 2023. So do you think it is right for a quota to be created for women to be involved? Or is that tokenism where it's not, they don't deserve it, you're just creating?
So for me, there are two aspects, like two sides to it. As someone who's, for me, I feel I'm empowered, I'm strengthened, I have the rights. Even when they were telling us we were not going to pay for our tickets, I was one of the people who said, let us pay. Because when it's time to speak, they'll say, you people that didn't even bring money, get out. Do you understand? I want to be able to say, okay, I've dropped my own money too. And I have every right to be involved in this. If you want to give a percentage off, that's all well and good, because that's connected to most women not having the same financial backing that everybody else does, right? And that's one of the reasons we have these little groups here and there to see how we can support each other. Because we do not have the money as women compared to the men. So when it comes to money, we know that's an issue. When it comes to the tokenism, you look at the gap, it's huge. It's huge. How many people want to even give young people a chance? Then they'll say, then a woman. We've not even given a young man a chance. Then a woman wants to come and tell us what to do. And it seems like, for most Nigerian men, it seemed like a war. It's like these people want to come and take over, or these people want to, they're already taking over in our homes. They're in charge at home. We had a senator who actually came out and said that. And he said, you people are already running our homes. You want to now come here and run this place. Because in his mind, this place is supposed to be for the men. We are in charge as men. We are the ones that should tell you what you do. So I feel when even discussing the gender bill, it was more from the perspective of how can we fix that gap for people to see that women can actually do this work. So I know the thought process was, should we make it 10 years, 15 years, the tokenism? Should it be 3 cycles? At least for those 3 cycles, you have the women. Then you drop that seat and allow the women to get involved. Because it's basically like a baton. You've given them a head start to be tried and tested. You know what I mean? And then possibly the people will see that these women can do it. That was the idea of the tokenism. I can understand for a man who has suffered his everything to come and be told, move aside just because this person is a woman. I wouldn't accept that. Do you understand? Especially if I'm more qualified, for example. It will be painful for me, for my constituency to decide. If the people say, we want this woman, allow her to run. I think that's really where we have a problem. You know, that making it to that final where you're actually voted for. We haven't tried enough of that. So that's where probably the tokenism would help. For me, I don't see the tokenism from a negative perspective. I get upset sometimes because I'm like, if I went to school, you went to school, really. You probably didn't even go to school. But I'm having to answer to you, you know, just because you have this space. But I know representation isn't just about the educated. Inclusivity, diversity, all of that. It's about all of us. But tokenism, I feel, for me, it's a temporary measure that would help. If it bridges that gap, it would help, because Nigerians need to see that women can actually do it. And I think we have a few of them that have shown us the possibility. Amina Mohammed tried. She didn't make it in the Nigerian space. She ran twice. she didn't make it. So
Even
it's not.
when she
You see,
was
the thing is,
nominated, her own people fought against her.
thank you. Her own people told her you're not from here.
Yeah.
You understand? So if she was here, would she be the Amina Mohammed that she is today? Think about it.
That's a solid question.
Sure.
For many of them, you have the Okonjo-Iwealas of this world. When she was minister, the news, the attacks.
Constantly.
Today we're like, yay,
Yeah.
you know,
Aruma
she's one
Ote.
of us.
Yeah.
There's so many, and I think as a woman it's harder. Look at what happened even in Britain. 45
Exactly.
days. If it was a guy, he probably would have gotten away with a
Yeah.
lot more.
I must say that I appreciate your honesty and sincerity, and I've known Aisha for almost 17 years now, and she
Yes.
hasn't changed. This is who she is. Aisha also is now a painter. I don't know if you've
I've
always been,
a
but
painter.
I've seen some of her work, and her work is brilliant.
Thank
Aisha is a great communicator. She is a great photographer, a great creator. Her work is out there for all to see, and
Thank
she
you.
also is a role model for so
Yeah.
many people. Before it went all digital, Aisha was already in that space. When we talk about communications, media, she is someone I'll call an expert and a professional.
Thank
And
you.
we appreciate the fact that even after running, you didn't stop. You still
Yeah.
remained in the space.
I did pull back a bit.
You did pull back a
I
bit,
did,
but you're
I
still
did.
serving. And
Yes.
the hope is that you continue to share your story, because
Yeah.
people need to learn from this. People need to
Yeah.
understand the reality. Almost every young person who tried to run and didn't work out, they disappeared
Yes.
because, like you say, the trauma, what you
It's
go
traumatizing.
through.
Trust
so much.
issues.
The trust
I have
issues.
a family member who was paid off and comfortably moved away from the place, and he was like, at least he has collected that he
He's
should,
good.
I shouldn't
Go.
worry, I will lose, but he has collected and he will help me and support me later, but he has collected his Olo and he left. And this was someone who was supposed to fight for me, to be my face in the space. And when I said this, it's not just about our leaders. Nigerians need to understand our problem is not just our leaders. I went in, I told you, we did the whole walking on the streets, protesting, fighting, writing articles against all of these things. Until you're within that system and you're on the grassroots level, you won't understand that our problem is not just our leaders, it's all of us.
Aisha,
It's all of us, and we all have to get involved. We really do.
thank you so much. I think that's a great place to leave it. So many things to learn. I want to listen to this over and over again, and I
Definitely.
hope more people can. But this was also supported by the Harry Ball Foundation, who supported us to make this happen, and kind people like you willing to share your story. A lot of people have
Thank you.
refused to share their story.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
so,
really?
yes,
That's
yes,
sad.
it's hard getting people to share their stories. And so, thanks to everybody for listening and watching. My name is Andy Madaki, and
Anekan Ezekiel.
how can they find you online if you want to be found, Aisha?
So my name is Aisha Augie, and my all handles at Aisha AK49, AISHA AK49.
Okay, and you can also find me at Andy Madaki on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
You can find me on Instagram at Annie Ezekiel.
AKA Skywalker.
Yes.
It's been the updates. Do have a lovely weekend whenever you listen to this. But please remember to vote, stay and protect your vote, and ensure that your vote is counted. Catch you on our next episode.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.